In this video, I want to introduce you to the concept of connecting your GNS3 simulated network to an actual live external network or live external device. It doesn't have to be a network. Maybe you want to take your GNS3 topology and you want to practice AAA, you want to practice Radius, but you need a Radius server to do that. Maybe you've actually got another laptop or a server sitting right on your desk that actually has a Radius server application running in it, and you want to connect that to your simulated topology in GNS3. Or, more likely, if you're like a CCNA or CCNP student, you probably want to practice some of those switching commands that are not available in the EtherSwitch module or in the built-in Ethernet switch node within GNS3. And so you want to, once again, connect your virtual topology to a real physical switch. So here I'm going to start the process of explaining how that's done. And we're going to look at it from the perspective of connecting my GNS3 topology into a switch port on a real external switch, and that switch port is configured as an access port. So, before we actually get into the actual mechanics of how this works, let's go ahead and take a look, first of all, at what I'm actually going to be doing. So this right here represents my actual layout, my topology here. So this is my laptop, and this right here is an actual physical switch I have sitting next to me. And I've got that physical switch turned on right now, and I have a real Ethernet cable connecting one of the ports of that switch into the actual Ethernet NIC card of my laptop. So that's how I'm doing this. Now, with GNS3, you actually could even use your Wi-Fi NIC card and connect it via Wi-Fi. Now, certainly you're not going to be able to do that to connect to a switch. But if you want to connect to a physical device like a switch or a server, key point is you take that physical device, whatever it is, in this case a switch, connect it via a real physical Ethernet cable into the NIC card of whatever laptop or device it is where you're actually running GNS3. Now here within GNS3, I've got GNS3 up and running, and I've got my virtual topology built. And here's how we're going to connect all this together. I'm going to use one of the built-in nodes within GNS3 called the cloud node. Now let me preface this by saying I could also select the host node. Cloud node, host node, they both do exactly the same thing. And in just a moment I'll talk about why you might want to use one over the other. And so once I have the cloud node in there, I'm going to configure that cloud node so that it recognizes that it should connect externally to my actual NIC card. So I'm going to configure the cloud node, and also if you were using the host node, same thing. Make it realize via configuration that's connecting to your LAN adapter, your NIC card. And then after that's done, using just the regular, add a link tool that's within GNS3, I'm just going to add a link between the fast Ethernet port of my router into the cloud. And so by this cloud node here, this is going to be the thing that's actually going to connect my simulated environment to my real physical hardware on the outside. So how do we go ahead and do that? So like I said, I've already got the physical piece done. I've got the switch powered on. I've got the switch physically cabled into the Ethernet port on the back of my laptop. And I've got the switch, running. Right now I've changed the host name to Keith Switch just to make it unique. So at that point, I'm going to go into GNS3. And just to make this super simple, I'm just going to use a single router. I don't need to have a real big topology in order to demonstrate the fundamental concept here. And so now I'm going to click on right here, this part here, which is the Browse End Devices. And you'll see I've got Cloud in here. So just drag and drop that into your topology. And now right-click on Cloud. There's no command line interface for this, just like how the Ethernet switch didn't have a command line and the frame relay switch. So you're just going to use the configure button here. And now here, under Ethernet, you've got various options. So what this is saying is, okay, how is the cloud node going to connect to the outside world? And if you select this drop-down box, I could have it connect to the outside world via my Wi-Fi card. In some scenarios that might research online, they recommend configuring a loopback adapter and then connecting your cloud to that. But in my particular case, I'm just going to have my cloud connect to my local area connection. This is my LAN adapter. And then I'll click Add. And then at that point, I just click Apply and then OK. So now my cloud knows how it's supposed to connect external to my laptop. In other words, what physical NIC card on my laptop should it be connected to? So now it's just simply a matter of using the Add a Link tool, go to my router, select his fast Ethernet link. You're going to have to do this via Ethernet. You can't select a serial interface or anything, and connect it to the local area connection right here that you see within the cloud. Okay, deselect that. Now at this point, before I go any further, I know that this cloud really represents a switch that I'm connected to. So I can actually right click on the cloud and click right here where it says change symbol. And now I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and I know that that's actually connected to a multi-layer switch. I've got a 3750 sitting next to me right here. So I'll actually change the icon to be multi-layer switch. Don't have to do this. It just makes it so that when I'm looking at it in the topology, it looks a little bit better. So I actually know what I'm looking at right here. Now you can't change the name. It still has to represent as cloud. Right now it's saying cloud 2 because I already created a cloud to test this out before I did the video. But if this is your first cloud, it'll probably say cloud 1. All right, so now I'm done with that. Go ahead and go in my router and start it. Now one thing you'll notice, and the switch might talk about this. Now in my particular case, it's not. But when I did this the first time, you can see I was getting duplex mismatch messages. And that's because by default, the router's interface is connecting into the cloud is running half duplex. And the switch was saying, hey, I'm confused. I'm running full duplex. The thing I'm connected to is half duplex, but we can fix that real easily. So let's just double click on the router. And now we're in that router here. So we just go into the router's interface. And whenever you change things at the physical or the data link layer, I always recommend that you shut down the interface first. You can just have unpredictable results if you try to change physical or data link layer characteristics of an interface while that interface is actually up and running. So I'm going to shut it down. And now I'm going to change the duplex to full. Then I'll do a no shut. Okay. And now how do I know it's actually connected? Well, there's a couple of ways. One way you can do is because my switch is doing CDP, I can just do show CDP neighbor on my virtual or my emulated router. And you can see right here, it's connected to Keith's switch. Another way I can tell this is on my actual switch. Now I connected it physically. Let's go back to my drawing right here. I connected it physically to port 0/2. That's the port that I'm actually connected to on the switch. And on the switch, show run interface fast Ethernet 0/2. You can see I've just simply configured it as an access port, and it's defaulting to VLAN 1. And then what I also did is under my VLAN 1, under my switched virtual interface, I gave an IP address. And then my router here, still getting a duplex mismatch. Let's take a look at our interface. Fast Ethernet 0/0. This might just be an old message. Let's take a look here. Show interface, Fast Ethernet 0/2. And right now this guy is full duplex. So we should have parity here. We should have full duplex on both sides. So I'm going to ignore that message for the moment. So on the router side, you can see, let's go ahead and configure an IP address on that router's interface. This is just going to give further proof that I am really connected to that external device. IP address 1.1.1.2 because my switch was 1.1.1.1. Guess I have to go in the interface first to do that. Okay, so if I'm really connected to that physical switch, I should be able to ping it. And it's going to ARP, and then I have a successful ping. So that's it. So to recap everything we did, step number 1 was to actually go to my physical device, turn it on, configure it however I wanted to configure it, and then connect a physical Ethernet cable from one of the interfaces on my physical device into the Ethernet NIC card on my laptop where I'm running GNS3. So that completed the physical configuration. Step number 2 was I started up GNS3. I created my topology however I wanted. And then the key component to connect these two together was to use the cloud node. And so within the cloud node, I just right-clicked on it. I selected configure. And under the Ethernet tab right here, I ensured that this drop-down box was selecting my local area connection, which is my LAN adapter. Now, I don't want 2 of them. I'm not going to worry about that for now. Once I had that selected, then the last piece of the puzzle was to start up my router in this particular case, add a link. Actually, you should do this before you start the router. While the router was still powered off, add a link between it and the cloud. Optionally, you can change the icon of the cloud, and then you start up your router. Now, before I finish, one last thing I want to talk about. I mentioned that the cloud and the host are interchangeable. Let me just drag the host in here for just a second. Now, if I right-click on host, you'll see that it also has the option to connect to various things here. It's really no different. The configuration is exactly the same. So why would I use one over the other? Well, let's say that here in my actual lab, right next to me, I had, let's say, 3 physical switches. You know, I want to test out some things like multiple spanning trees and VLAN access lists and private VLANs and stuff. And I sort of figure that I need a minimum of 3 physical switches to do all that stuff. In that particular case, it would be appropriate for me to use the cloud icon, because my simulated environment is connecting to a real world environment of more than one thing, multiple devices. Now on the flip side, let's say I really was just going to connect to, let's say, a AAA server. Let's say I had a physical server sitting on the desk next to me that was running Windows 2000 or Windows R8 or whatever, and it had a AAA Radius server inside of it that I had up and running, and then I was going to connect to that. Well, I could still use the cloud node, but it might be more appropriate in that particular case to instead use the host node, because really I am connecting to a host, a server. Really is completely up to you. They both do exactly the same thing. So that concludes this particular video on how to connect your GNS3 virtual environment to a physical device.